Welcome back to another edition of Zero Blog 30. Today, we have 4 rounds of the magazine. Round number 1, the Unabomber is dead. Old Ted Krasinski is deader than a doornail after spending 20 years in one of the worst places on Earth. Round number 2, there's a shit ton of documents that I'm sure that you've seen for... That's 2. I told you last time that I was going to cuss. Already 1 right there.
It takes some discipline. You're going to have to train your head.
It takes some insane discipline. So President Trump, obviously you know about the classified documents and what's going on there. There was also an audio recording of him knowingly saying that he was going to show classified information to other people. And now that the real indictments have come down, they look pretty bad. All of the different information about the indictments look awful, and they said that there's even more stuff that they haven't released yet.
This round is just about the documents in his bathroom. I was just tickled by it because I can relate to it.
Quick.
Yeah, it's just quick, easy. Documents in the bathroom. I loved it. I enjoyed it.
No free podcast ads, but if you want to get into the weeds, there was the guy that we had on who did the going through Hillary Clinton's email. He was on Lawfare podcast, which goes into national security issues, and he broke it down, and it was awesome. Like, it was really, really informative. So that was weird, plugging another podcast on my own. But anyway, finally, we're going to talk about a couple British troops that passed out over. Yeah, there's a couple that passed out at the king's coronation. That's the king of the United Kingdom, by the way. That's that king that we're talking about. Oh, King Charles.
I think this is like birthday or something like that. Some crazy thing. But anyway, it was just
if you just had your coronation less than a month ago, you shouldn't get a birthday.
No, I agree.
Agreed. It's too much.
If you want to be a cool king who's loved, be like, guess what? All troops have the weekend off this weekend. Bye, everybody.
Exactly right.
Whatever.
Exactly right. And if you want to do that, just these kids, it's basically like the king has to be a kid that's born in December. Like, you want to have a big birthday party for them, but they don't deserve it. Like, you don't deserve Christmas and your birthday in the same month.
Right. So get out of here with that.
Neither does the king. I lost my train of thought there.
Interview is the last round. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Interview is the last round. And this one was, I know that when a really good interview happens whenever I am talking to these folks after it's over. And Tom Hanton was one of those interviews because he was a prisoner of war for 275 days at the Hanoi Hilton. We've talked to Charlie Plum, and as you know, John McCain was there as well. He talked about some of those experiences and broke down really what it was like for him being shot down, being able to see different people with AK-47s and the muzzle flashes while he was in a parachute in the middle of the sky, looking for a place that he could land. I can't imagine that level of terror. He talks about hiding in the bamboo, what happened whenever he was caught, the injuries that he sustained. It's really incredible, his life story. And then not only that, but it's another example of what Vietnam prisoners of war, by and large, have come to show and demonstrate in society. How they are so balanced and calm and collected is... I wouldn't be like that. Like, I look at myself and how much I talk about my experiences. They're so humble. And I was trying to think why when I was thinking about this interview all weekend long. And I think it's maybe because they have experienced the worst of the worst. Mm-hmm. So no matter what happens from there forward, it's not going to be as bad as it was. Mm-hmm. Like, so you have that perspective. And that's kind of what we see. And it's what you see at Tom, just very calm and humble. You're going to love this interview. But let's get going with the actual show today, round 1. Today's show is also brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Barstool Sports recognizes that VFW Post have been pillars of support in their communities for decades. And in partnership with New Amsterdam Vodka, Barstool is offering much-needed assistance to support the renovation of a selected Post common area. So like where people are hanging out, they're watching TV, they're chilling together, all the really important stuff. That's what we want to renovate. Grant applications are now open, and you can apply by visiting barstoolsports.com/winsforwarriors. We've also made some custom Undefeated 70-76 t-shirts that are available to purchase from Barstool Sports Store, and 100% of the net proceeds will be donated to support Barstool Sports' mission to make a difference for veterans. So make sure to learn more and submit your application at barstoolsports.com/winsforwarriors so that your VFW can be considered. Again, grant applications are now open. Visit barstoolsports.com/winsforwarriors to learn more or to submit your VFW for consideration. What do we got, Kate?
Ding dong, the Unabomber is dead, everyone. Ted
dong,
Kaczynski.
indeed.
Hand
aka
up. Didn't know he was still alive.
Really?
Yeah, me either. Thought it was death penalty.
He was laying low. He was laying low. Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber, died by suicide in prison over the weekend at age 81 after dealing with late-stage cancer. He was known for a 17-year bombing campaign that killed 3 people and injured 23 others, leaving many of them permanently maimed. However, he left this world. There was zero chance he was going to do it as a free man anyway, since he was sentenced to 4 life sentences plus 30 years for the campaign of terror that set the entire country on edge for decades, really.
I didn't know that either, that it went on for 17 years.
17 years. He was a Harvard-educated mathematician. Incredibly smart man, but ended up living as a recluse in a dingy cabin in the boonies of Montana. And there's some fascinating interviews with some of his neighbors who were like, he was a total dick, he was a weirdo, he was this and that. There's fascinating interviews of people who knew him at Harvard, where he had enrolled himself, like college students enroll in studies for like cash and extra credits and blah, blah, blah. He was enrolled in like psychological mind studies where they would fuck with people, like fuck with the students, and like he would get talked down to and treated meanly as part of the studies.
Wait, not the Harvard experiments, right?
Not the Harvard experiments, but like he was part of experiments too. Do some Googling and looking around if you're looking for something to do. It's kind of fascinating, his story. I don't think that's why he did the things he did. I think he was just a bad dude. But anyway, pretty interesting. He targeted, by the way, this 17-year spree completely changed the way that we mailed packages and boarded airplanes and all kinds of stuff. Like it caused like a security revolution, much like 9/11 did. After 9/11, we had to relook at everything over again. His targets included academics and the airlines, the owner of a computer rental store, an ad exec, and a timber industry lobbyist. In 1993, a California geneticist and a Yale University computer expert were maimed by bombs within the span of 2 days. Two years later, he reached out to the New York Times and the Washington Post saying, publish my manifesto, or more bad stuff is going to happen. And after a big back and forth with the editors, they published his manifesto, 35,000 words. And a lot of people were like,
yeah, it just goes to show if you have a manifesto, you're crazy. Like, you just do. Yes. You can't write a manifesto and be normal.
And people were very against, like, how could you publish this? How could you do, like, share this crazy killer's words? Well, it turns out his brother, Ted Kaczynski's brother, David, and David's wife, Linda, they read the manifesto and they were like, because Ted and his brother, they pretty much just kept in contact via letter writing. And Ted Kaczynski's brother was like, I recognize the phrasing and the syntax of this manifesto. Oh my God, I think it's my brother. So his own brother tipped off the FBI, who had been searching for the Unabomber. It was one of the costliest manhunts ever. It cost taxpayers $50 million.
Wow.
Over those 17 years to catch him. And it ended up being his brother reading the manifesto in the newspaper and being like, holy shit, that's my brother. In 1996, authorities found him in a small plywood and tar paper cabin outside Lincoln, Montana, that was filled with journals, a coded diary, explosives, ingredients, and 2 completed bombs. So he was definitely going to keep on doing it.
That's what they call in the biz, red-handed.
They really did. So pretty
kind of crazy. I just remember, being 6th grade, I knew the broad strokes of Ted Kaczynski. I didn't know all this other stuff. And then it came to light again when I remember watching Good Will Hunting for the first time. And he's like talking about a guy. He's like, yeah, a guy went to University of Michigan. Then he went to go teach at Cal Berkeley. And then he went to Montana, blew the competition away. He's like, who are you talking about? Ted Kaczynski. That's a good reference in pop culture. Got to give him Matt and Ben that credit. But I didn't know he was still alive. I didn't know he did this for over the 17 years, and it's crazy it took him that long to find him. But I guess when you're living in the mountains.
And I think we all thought that he got the death penalty. This is great because I've told you guys in the group chat how much I like looking at like supermax prisons and shit like that. Like I think it's really interesting. Ted Kaczynski was in the worst prison, some say, in the entire world.
Where?
So when you say like the death penalty is bad, this sentence that he got is exponentially worse than death. I would choose the most painful death in the world to avoid what he had to do. So there's a place called ADX Florence, and ADX Florence is the biggest. There's only one Supermax like to this level in the United States. They have razor wire not only like 25, 30 feet high. They have razor wire all the way over the top of the installation too. So no helicopters can land to get some people that are in there like El Chapo.
Ooh.
It's completely covered. All of the cells are in the ground. They're lowered in the ground, and there's one window that's 4 inches thick and 4 feet long. The only thing they could see is the sky. For the rest of their lives, until they're transferred out, which most don't, for the rest of their lives, all they see is the sky at the most. Their cells, 9 by 7. The only thing that's in there is a concrete bed, a concrete stool, and a thin mattress that's no bigger than 1.5 inches thick with cotton on the inside. They get half of a pillow, like hand-sized pillow, and then one bed sheet that's like 3 by 5, so it's not long enough for you to choke yourself and kill yourself. Not only that, they get no human interaction except for 1 hour a day. They get to go out to the rec time, and then they move into a 12 by 10 area. Again, fully concrete. The only thing that you could see is the sky. If they touch a person, like if they're putting in their tray, if they touch you, you can get shot and killed. And they all know it. Like if you step off of a line whenever you're going, they could kill you. Like it's almost instantaneous death for whatever they're doing, unless you indicate that that's what you want. If you indicate that that's what you want, you're not going to get it. The wardens that have left there had said that this is hell on earth, that people are in there that were in Guantanamo Bay, and they write the human rights places and be like, this is so much worse than whatever happened in Guantanamo Bay. So when we talk about they got off light for the death penalty, 23 and a half hours of day isolation for 20 years in the worst prison in the world.
Yeah, I think that's so much worse than the
so
death
much
penalty.
worse. The other people, notable people that are in there is the Boston bomber is in there. El Chapo is in there. Timothy McVeigh spent a little while, and his Nichols was the co-conspirator with Timothy McVeigh. He's in there as well. The ice cream serial killer, the Golden Gate, almost all people that are incredibly, incredibly dangerous, or those that have killed several people in prison will go there.
Yeah, and not to get in a moral discussion about death penalty versus not death penalty, but I absolutely think, as I said, that is so much worse to live there.
Dog, 20 years with 23 and a half hour days?
Forget it. You lose your mind. But
rightfully
so. Rightfully so.
Yeah. There's one interview, if you guys want to look into it. It's called ADX Florence, and there was a mobster that was in there for, I think, 12 years. And at the end, he won an appeal, so he was released. And it's the longest interview that somebody's done, because typically when you go in ADX, the only way you're coming out is in a body bag. But he actually got released, and he talked about it, and it is chilling, to say the least.
Yeesh.
Anyways, let's move on.
Let's move on
to round number 2.
Here's the truth. Dads want steak. When you give Dad perfectly aged and oh so tender steaks, you're not just giving him the best meal of his life, but the chance to grill them up and share the moment with you. For a limited time, when you go to omahasteaks.com and enter the code 0 into the search bar, you'll be able to order the Dad's Favorite gift package for just $99.99. Plus, you will get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers with your order. These burgers taste like a steak on a bun and are ultra lean and pack a bold, intense, beefy flavor. So save over 60% on the Dad's Favorite Grill Pack, and you'll get 4 bacon wrap fillets, 4 premium air-chilled boneless grilled chicken breast, 4 boneless pork chops, 4 gourmet jumbo franks, 4 made-from-scratch caramel apple tartlets, and Omaha Steak seasoning. Plus the 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers for only $99.99. Remember, gifting is easy. Dads want steak, and Omaha Steaks isn't just steak. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. Don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com and type 0 into the search bar and order the Dad's Favorite gift package for Father's Day today. That's omahasteaks.com, keyword 0.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah. these photos came out over and like
I'm so glad I finally had an opportunity to talk about all those and it fit in. I've been wanting to for a while.
I didn't know
Yeah, I
you were
could
such
tell.
an expert. I didn't know you were such
Big prison geek there.
I know. This just I'm putting sometimes I just put on my blinders. I'm like I'm like worn out on politics. I don't care. This just delighted me seeing these boxes in the bathroom. I just really whatever. Anyway,
it's like Arrested Development, like right?
Yeah, it feels like
it's the banana stand.
It doesn't feel real, I guess, and so that's why it just seems so comical and so silly. Classified documents are normally kept in what is called a SCIF, aka a sensitive compartmented information facility. But in this particular case, they were kept in a SCIF, aka a stinky commode in Florida, folks.
That's exactly right, Kate.
Anyways, when Trump left the White House, his staff moved dozens and dozens and dozens of boxes from D.C. down to Mar-a-Lago, his famous residence / it's like a club you can be a member of that has all kinds of different events and all this stuff.
I actually heard that Trump did a Diddy move. So
they did a little Diddy move. It wasn't his fault. The movers come in so quick there, they just wrap everything up, and there's nothing you could do. But all these boxes got moved down to his primary post-presidential residence, Mar-a-Lago, and his house down in Florida. And where do you put all this stuff? And you know the type, the white, thick cardboard boxes.
The lawyers' boxes.
They're like lawyers' boxes.
Documents boxes, for files and such.
Boxes. So there's this photo of them, like the U.S. government documents, national security secrets about nuclear weapons and foreign militaries, all this stuff that he was not allowed to remove from government custody that got brought down there. It's sitting on the stage it's stacked all over the place. The boxes got moved around. So if they were having an event in this area of the house, they would just shuffle them over to another area of the house. Move those.
Like so annoying.
It's like showing the house.
Yeah,
so
like
annoying.
Showing the house. Stacked high in a storage room, carted to Trump's private chambers, crammed into a bathroom next to a shower stall, and it's these document boxes right next to a toilet with a big chandelier over top of them. He's got to get into my parents. You got to get a shredder, buddy. You got to get a shredder. You gotta.
Well,
my mom's
I think a couple things when you look at this story. Number one, like he's brash. He could have declassified a lot of these documents, from what I understand, and he just didn't.
Doesn't have the authority in a lot
not
of
anymore.
ways.
Not anymore.
But even
when he was
as
president?
the president. Nope. There's certain things, if it has human intelligence and if it has nuclear secrets, there has to be a triumvirate of people that say it. Like there is certain information that the president has the ability to declassify. Human intelligence and nuclear secrets are not one.
Okay, I was reading something, I think it was the Washington Post maybe, that said he could have done that, or he could have filed for a waiver so that he could have possession of them in a different area.
Has to be approved, exactly.
Okay, so there's things he could have done to have this done, but I think more importantly, anytime we see the inside of anything that is owned by Trump, you just see how terrible of a decorator he is. His taste is disgusting. It's gaudy. It's dated. It's just horrible.
And he went into the world's biggest Ross and picked out everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's it's like a heightened level of, remember in the 90s, like everybody's moms tried to make their kitchen look like a Tuscan Italian villa.
Yes.
It's like that aesthetic.
By the way, the downstairs bathroom at my new house looks exactly like that. It looks like an Olive Garden.
And now there's been such a backlash. Everyone's doing just beige living, plain beige, nothing, because I feel like there's such a
monochromatic.
Backlash. But it all came up in 2021. This guy, Walt Nauta, I'm probably saying that wrong, Nauta, he was an aide to Trump, and he opens up one of the doors, and one of the boxes has tipped over, and all these documents are just spilled out. And I guess he takes a picture of it. These aren't the exact, I don't know what the exact, but he sends it to another Trump aide, probably being like, oh my God. Dude,
it's just funny looking. It's just funny looking to see all those boxes all over different parts of his house.
It's a ridiculous story. And on its face, it's such a very Trumpian thing to do. It's such a Trump story. And it's funny because you have all these, but then when you think about the documents that are inside those folders, and some of what we've read about them, and it's legit national security secrets that show not only our weaknesses, and it's our own government's open about our weaknesses, but the weaknesses of our allies. That's a pretty significant one.
But I also like, though, the reverse psychology of nobody's going to look in here. You wouldn't think I
would look in my bathroom.
I would go to the bathroom in there, say I'm drunk at a party at Mar-a-Lago, and I make my way to that bathroom somehow, and I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm going to be looking at these boxes cracking up, but
Imagine you go in there and you're trying to, do a number 2, and you're looking for an old Sports Illustrated, and instead you find, nuclear classified secrets to read instead.
That's basically what Trump's house was. It was like the dentist's office with nothing but High Life magazines strung about.
Anyway, interesting. He's facing 37 counts related to sensitive documents in his bathroom, and I just
what I found interesting that I read?
You and me, ain't that America? Documents.
He reached out. I don't know if he reached out, but he made mention of, hey, whoever handled Hillary's whole thing with her emails that were deleted. He's like, we need to follow that game plan because she got off from doing all that. So whatever she did,
she was sending.
They did.
She was sending classified shit over a Gmail account. All. It's these olds. I'm telling you, Biden's got some in his garage. It's the olds. They're just. We got everybody check in on your olds today. Make sure they're not.
Look in their bathrooms. They might have national security.
Right. Go look in their bathrooms, please. Anyway,
I will say though, that's way better toilet information than TikTok, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You walk out of that bad boy, you know some shit.
You
Legit.
do.
Let me ask you this.
Damn it! Off.
Sorry, that was 2.
3.
That was back to back.
Yeah. Damn
it
doesn't count, right? Damn it doesn't count.
Not anymore.
It depends on how strict you want to be. But really quickly.
No, I don't want to be. I want PG-13.
Damn it got replaced by cunt, I think.
Whoa.
Is a bad word.
Yeah, hard
Whoa,
C-bomb.
this isn't Britain. Relax.
I actually don't think that counts as a curse word, though, right?
No.
It's a vulgar word.
They say
it's
it in
vulgarity.
Australia like a friendly thing. I'm taking it back.
Not in this country. Really quickly, though, what do you prefer when you're in doing your business? A hard copy of something or looking at your phone?
Oh, phone in a million. Because you can't wipe off a book. If you
know what I miss though? I miss those days. We used to have an enormous Far Side cartoon book, and also Dilbert. I'll hand up. I used to read a lot of Dilbert before Scott Adams went whack.
Big Dilbert had.
But we had 2 big cartoon books, and that was it. And so for 16 years, it was me reading these same comics and these same whatever. Anyway, I miss those days. I miss flipping through, looking for
my favorite all-time book for the toilet. Where's Waldo? I just look for that bastard over and over again.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that back. I think the toilet books.
Kate walks into the office and she's got a stack of.
She's got a stack of books like Bill Gates going for the weekend. She's got a canvas bag of books.
My big joke at Eagles tailgates before I walk into the porta potty, I go in and then I poke my head back out and I go, "Does anybody have a New York Times?" And then I go back in.
People love it. They go bananas.
Anybody have a Philly Inquirer I can borrow for a second?
Start clapping.
I'll be quick.
There, doing the wave for Kate. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The whole thing. All right, what do we got for round number 3?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and it's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs for you and never take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. I'm sure this is especially true if you're in the military and you're in any kind of leadership position. I know for me, when I became a new mom, it was a bit of an adjustment. All of a sudden, I wasn't number 1 anymore. I wasn't living alone in the city, living it up, doing what I wanted. I was on the back burner, and my son took top priority. All of a sudden, you can step back and be like, oh my God, I feel like I don't know myself anymore. What's going on? So when we spend all of our time giving, it can leave you feeling stretched thin and burned out and running on empty. And therapy is a great opportunity to intentionally put yourself first. It can give you the tools to find more balance, clarity, and intention in your life so you can keep supporting others. And you can't, if your tank is on empty, how do you have the fuel to help everybody else around you? And you got to thrive as an individual to help others thrive. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. If you're ready to try it out, just fill a brief questionnaire out to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. We've talked about that on ZBT before too, sometimes a therapist isn't the right fit, and that can be a pain. At BetterHelp, it's not a pain. It is so easy to find the right person for you. For more balance with BetterHelp, find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/0 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/0. 10% off your first month.
Just a quick one. Like we just all love when this happens because it happens to every unit at some point in the heat. Don't lock your knees when you're standing in formation. You're going to pass out. Every summer videos go viral all around the globe. It's one thing that connects all troops from North Korea down to Brazil, wherever. Several British soldiers fainted on Saturday while rehearsing for King Charles's upcoming birthday parade. And you're right. Enough with the parades for this guy. We're all burned out on it right now.
Well, he's been waiting so many years for this to all come to fruition, for him to become king. So he's like, it's almost like he's being let loose in the candy store, right? So he's just going nuts because he doesn't know how to handle himself.
Looking at his swollen hands, he's not going to be around much longer. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I want to be a mighty king, so enemies beware. How do you not have that at your coronation? If I was going to be king, that's what I would do. Or William, I guess, could play that song more than... Simba.
Well, it was 86 degrees over in the UK, which usually just don't happen. It doesn't get hot like that during the
humid.
And they wear these. You think some of our uniforms are bad? They wear the thickest woolen, long sleeve, bright red, black pants, the giant fur hats on an 86-degree day. 3 different guardsmen keeled over under the blazing sun at the House Guards, parade practice. The video shows a trombonist go down, and then 2 others go down, and then. But the best part is,
I want one of the British soldiers to have a slide whistle.
But in this particular case, it went mega viral because everyone was cracking up that he goes down, and everyone else just keeps trumpeting right over his completely limp body. Nobody missed a beat. They just keep just like, that's cold blooded. But anyway, I just
you know what they call that, Kate?
What?
Mission accomplishment, troop welfare.
That's right, mission accomplishment first. But anyway, don't lock your knees is the moral of that story as we head into summertime. Yep.
All right, well, let's move into the interview with Tom Hanton, who once again is a former backseater in a F-14. I think that's it. I always mess up planes. I'm the worst at planes, the absolute worst at it. Retired as a lieutenant colonel, doing amazing things still, and here he is.
I don't know about you guys, but I definitely cannot drink as much as I used to. Obviously now I'm pregnant, but I'm talking about even in between as I've gotten older. Once I hit my 30s, my God, I couldn't drink like I could in college without feeling like shit. Even just a few drinks has you feeling like crap these days in a world where we're being pulled in 1,000 different directions. You can't miss a day, especially if you're in the military. So More Labs has created a nifty lifesaver of a drink called Morning Recovery that helps prevent rough mornings after drinking. Similar drinks have existed in Korea for a long, long time, but there were no options like it in the US that worked, so their founder quit his job at Tesla to fix that and create Morning Recovery. It's super simple. All you gotta do is drink 1 Morning Recovery while you drink or before you go to bed. So put it next to me. I would have that right next to my bedside, or I would have it right out for when I came home as a little treat to myself and a reminder, oh yeah, I'm not gonna feel like crap tomorrow. Super simple. It contains herbs, vitamins, and minerals that help you bounce back, and a proprietary blend of electrolytes to rehydrate you. So you can have a fun night and feel good the next day, feel like a real human and like you did when you were 21 years old. They conducted a clinical study, and users of Morning Recovery felt up to 80% better than those without Morning Recovery across various symptoms after drinking. Go to morelabs.com, that's morelabs.com, and use code ZBT for 20% off your first order of Morning Recovery.
All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. Catherine, we'll start with you.
Ooh, I've just almost blurted out the first thing that came into my mind, which is, fellas, I pooped twice today.
Oh yeah, all
right. Hey, that's great, though. That's an improvement.
Huge news for me. I've been struggle busting. Yeah. People don't realize what these hormones do to you. Cons, I know you're experiencing it firsthand, but there's a lot more to it than you think.
Now, let me ask you a question here, Kate. What's that relief like?
Oh my God.
You know me, I've never probably been constipated in my entire life, so I don't know what that stressor's like. What's the relief there?
You ever put on a coat you haven't worn in a while and you find $50 in the pocket and you're pumped for like several hours afterwards? That's what it feels like for some reason. I take a poop now.
Unexpected win.
And I'm like, this is going to be a good morning. I feel mentally pumped when it happens.
Yeah, it's like a weight's lifted off of you.
I'm halfway.
Or
I'm halfway through, and I've only bought one pair of maternity pants from Target late one night in desperation. Still not wearing maternity pants.
What happened to the pants you wore the first go round?
I got rid of them all because I never thought I would be pregnant
think there was
again.
going to be a second go.
Wow, okay.
I got rid of everything, Cons. I said,
wow, all right.
I said this was a real treat. Never going to do it again.
Okay, didn't know that. All
anyway,
right.
So that's that. But check this out, just for video purposes.
Okay.
Hold on. Ready?
So.
Wink.
Oh,
Wow.
Katie baby belly.
It's big
That's
as
not
hell.
poop.
It's not poop,
Yeah.
but I pooped twice this morning. But anyway, it's just cracking me up wearing these pants. I feel like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. The little pants are scrunched down at the bottom. And I have no ass. It's like completely flat. And then this huge whatever. Boy, I guess that's it for me.
We're doing Katie self-esteem here in Safe Rounds. I love it.
Everyone else tell me why I'm gross.
No, you're doing fantastic.
I
But
look bad
Cons,
today too. Damn.
No,
Okay.
you look great.
You look
I
okay.
mean, how many months pregnant are you now? Like 4.5, 5?
People keep asking me. I've no idea. I don't do
Oh.
numbers. I don't do numbers.
Oh, keep it going, Kate. Like, just wait and be like, oh, baby time.
Mom
I think
almost said
it's
20
coming out
weeks.
today.
20 weeks ish. I don't know
I
how
think
many
he's
months
coming.
that is. I don't know.
20 weeks
20
is like
weeks.
5 months.
Yeah, 4.5 months. I was
Okay.
right. Yeah, 5 months. Yeah.
It's crazy because though the math doesn't check out. Like your whole life, you're told like, how long are women pregnant for? 9 months. No, not really, because you go to 40 weeks. That's basically 10 months.
It's like 10. Yeah. People need to start
Yeah.
thinking. Oh, last note. I had been
Why take a month off? Give it to yourself. Round up.
Give
My
it
God.
to
ladies.
yourself. Well, I've been losing weight at each of my appointments. They're like, oh, you lost a pound or two. You lost a pound or two. And I'm like, well, look at you. Whoa, look at me go. Wow. And then finally I went to the hospital and they're like, you gained 13 pounds. So I had been so I just have a feeling in my bones. I'm going to be Big Kate this season. I'm going to
No, you're allowed to. Give yourself some credit.
I'm
Kate.
gonna.
Yeah, just dive in, become best friends with both Ben and Jerry.
I'm gonna. Anyways, I guess that's it for me. I just wanted everyone to be very intimately up to date on what's going on with my intestines and my body.
That's exactly what Save Rounds is for, Kate. I'm
Thanks.
glad you did it. Cons, while Kate was talking, I thought of one thing because she said
What you
how
got?
tight her pants was. Now, I think everybody's this way. Guy, girl, doesn't matter who it is. Going up a size in pants hurts. Like
Yeah.
if you're from 34 and you go to 36, it hurts. If you're 36, 38, 30 to 32, not bad. But once you go from 34 to 36, it's different. So I wanted to hold on to 34 as much as I can when I got out of the Marines. But if you hold on too long, correct me if I'm wrong here, Cons, if you have pants that are too tight, you'll get yourself an ingrown pube, folks. You got to be careful.
Yep, amen. I know Cons would agree.
Is
Cons
that
is
a
a
problem
huge.
for you?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever had
Big
that
guy.
problem.
Yeah.
But I was just
Yeah,
thinking,
you got to pull them tweezers out and pull that thing out. It's like a fucking rope spool. It just keeps coming and coming and coming.
yeah, I think
All
that was
right,
a,
Cons, anyways.
I
What
think that
about
was
you?
a,
What do you got?
A John Mellencamp line. Hold on to size 34 pants as long as I can, right? I think.
Don't let go.
But no, same thing no, dude. I held on to 34s. I was 34 for the vast majority of my adulthood. And
Same.
then, like, I'm not quite 36. Like, I'm 35 in some pants.
Yeah.
But still, it's knowing that you can't get 34s anymore, just not happening for you. It's like, all right, I guess I'm just past that part of my life. That's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put out something so scientific last night, speaking of getting older.
You know I
and
love science.
I don't know what made me think of this. We're sitting there watching TV, and I look over at Alex. I go, how long do you have to know someone for you to say, I've known that person a long time?
I think there's
10
phases
years.
in life that are different. So, like high school, I think anything longer than a year and a half, you know them. I actually think that translates to the military, too. If you've been around somebody for a year in the military and they've been in, like, your unit or your platoon, you feel like you've known them your whole fucking life, right?
Yeah. No, Kate,
But I would say normal life, how long do you have to know somebody to know them a long time? I would say probably 5 to 8 years for a long time.
I think that I don't now.
It's
It's
10.
all relative to your age too. But yeah, I'm with Kate. I think you have to know someone 10 plus years
Yeah.
for you to say I've known that person a long time.
So, Cons, you wouldn't say you've known me for a long time?
no. And here's
Wow.
what
But
I
you've
would.
known each
how I-
other for almost 10 years.
Here's how
Yeah.
I would classify you. I was hoping somebody would come to
is
this
disappointing.
conclusion, and former producer Kyle came to this conclusion, and I think he nailed it. If you've known someone for a year or less, I know that person. 2 to 4 years, known that person for a bit. 5 to 9 years, what we've known you for a while. 10 plus, I've known that person a long time.
So let me get this straight, Cons. You truly believe that you don't know your wife for a long time?
No, not yet.
That's
Not yet.
insane.
Yeah.
That is absolutely
I mean,
insane.
if I'm talking to you about my poop, then I feel like I've known you a long time. I feel like it's been 10 years.
I mean,
Well,
by
I
the letter
guess
of the law,
that how well you know somebody is different from how long. I could see that differentiation too.
yes.
They came out like little rabbit turds today.
Yeah, by the way, I watched a couple vids this weekend of rabbits getting birthed. That shit will blow your... There's like 50 of them in those things just fucking popping out. What, Kate?
Why? Why is that your algorithm?
Because I've been watching a lot of garden talk.
I don't
Like
wanna
I've been
know.
watching a lot of garden stuff because I want to do a terrarium, like a self-sustaining ecosystem. I think I've talked about that. I've
No, you
watched
haven't.
so many videos. I'm doing it. When
Okay.
I moved to Chicago, because I don't want my ecosystem to get fucked up, obviously, on the move. There's a guy that I saw. He has this ecosystem. This thing hasn't been unsealed in 35 years. And there's still like little beetles going around, little worms going around. Like
Really?
there's things that are growing. It's a self-sustained ecosystem. Like it has
like
humidity on
Biodome,
the inside.
the movie.
Wow.
Yes, that's where all the water comes from. It's self-sustaining
Hey.
and it blows my mind how they do it. I don't...
That's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess, chaps, maybe it's a little different with my wife, but I think by the letter of law, I haven't known her in a long time. I've only known her for a while.
Knowing really well and knowing a long time are different.
Very different. But
All right, well.
that's my scientific conclusion. And I also know Nick agrees as well. It's 10 plus years to know somebody a
Okay.
long time.
Okay. And I also think that depends on how old you are. At 40, I think it's
Yes.
that long.
Yes.
At 15, not so
If
Correct.
we went through puberty together through those years, then you know me. Damn.
Oh, yeah.
If
we're
stick with
stinking
me,
and spraying our bodies with Axe body spray.
right, and you stuck with me through that, then yeah, shout out Martha, Jacqueline, and Mandy.
Or through your mullet
See
face.
me at my worst. Yeah, them too. They were there for that. Anyways,
Mine is I am sick and tired of this house buying process, and house selling, I think, is worse than house buying.
You think
Because
so?
you have to... Oh,
I haven't given it any thought, so let me
landslide.
hear. Let me hear. I really haven't
landslide.
given it a
You
thought.
sold your house in
I
Texas
actually-
when you weren't there.
That's true. I was like so hands off. I was like, I let my realtor and my property manager
you're not
take
there.
care of it. Yeah.
So if you're selling while you're still in the house, everything has to be spotless at all times.
Yeah.
And nobody lives that way. And like realtors and people that are going to buy a house, I don't give a fuck when I'm going to buy a house. But they're like, oh, you got shampoo? Who uses shampoo? These people are fucking dirty. They got shampoo. Got to put the trash can in the garage because people don't know we have fucking trash cans. We got to make sure that the pillows are exactly right. We have to make sure that there's absolutely nothing on the countertops. No toasters, no coffee. We don't have toast and coffee in this house. We don't do it.
I'll
I
say
gotta
this though. I don't know
say-
how you guys think. Going through the house searching and buying process. If you gave me the same house, one had a bunch of clutter and one was like really well decorated and pristine, but it was the exact same house, I'd say the one that's clean, devoid of clutter, is the better house.
Sure. I agree with the cleanliness. The cleanliness has got to be top notch. Mm-hmm. But we can organize our shampoo, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could put your shampoo. Nobody's going to come in and be like, these fuckers have shampoo, these pieces
Yeah,
of
but it's
shit.
just that much more clutter. I'm telling you, I remember we looked at one house.
No, I know.
And there was just
I'm-
stuff.
We
and
need
it
to
just
get
like,
over
ugh.
it as a society.
Maybe.
I
What were you gonna say,
got-
Kate?
The inspector went through the house that I bought and took a bunch of photos, and I was given that report, and it made me feel better because I'm moving into a house of the family has 2 boys, and I'm gonna be having 2 boys, and they raised these 2 boys there, which also makes me feel good, being like, okay, they were able to survive there with a baby and a toddler and whatever. But the photos the inspector sent, because the home photos when I bought it were like immaculate, he must have caught them on a rough day. Because it was like just every day, all the photos just had everyday clutter. Like the kitchen was covered in cups and like all this shit. And it actually made
That's
me,
real life.
It was like real life photos of the house. It wasn't disgusting, but it was like there was some clothes thrown over the couch and toys everywhere and blah blah blah. And it actually made me feel good to see it lived in
I
and
could be
like
dirty
livable.
too.
I wish every house came with photos of like, here's the photos of it immaculate when you move in, but here's also how it looked when we were like really living in it on a Wednesday on a school night. Like, here's the, I don't know.
True. That's the night that it needs to be.
Yeah.
And not only am I going through that, but I'm a big time spyer. I don't know if you guys do this, but I have Blink cameras and Simply Safe cameras all over my house. Not Blink, Simply Safe. So the Simply Safes are all over, and I can record for like 1 minute clips, and it's in 4K. It's amazing. Like to have all those. So and I have it on super sensitive mode right now. So if you fart, like the camera turns on, essentially.
Yeah.
So I've been going through and watching like what's been going on, because in Texas it's a one-party consent state. Like all I have to do is mine. So I've been these realtors don't know shit, man. There's so many realtors that have no idea. One walked into the back of my pool house, and like all the big pool equipment's there. It's like a gas heater. It's a big ass nice pump, and then there's a normal water heater that's outside that, spoiler alert, heats the water in the shower in the pool house. The realtor comes out and he's like, oh yeah, this is a bigger tank. It's a 45-gallon water tank. It's a 55-gallon water tank. And then he goes, this is the water that this water heater is the one that heats the jacuzzi. Like, that's not possible for a water heater to do that. You have to have like a huge gas. Whatever, I can see I lost you guys already. But it drove me fucking bananas
Oh,
this
it's got to be
weekend.
hard to watch that, yeah.
When they're like, oh, this shower, I'm not sure if it runs. I'm like, it does run, and it's a steam shower. That's the reason why the fucking head looks different. So many things that were in our house, like the nicest features of our house. The guy goes, it's a 1/4 of an acre lot. Like, it's literally double and then some.
Well, I'll
That's
tell you what.
important.
What I think we've seen in the last handful of years, especially since COVID, with all the shows on Netflix and Bravo about real estate that look real flashy, and they flash like the commission on the screen, and they don't get into the details on how that commission gets chopped up. People see real estate now recently as a job that's like, oh, I'll just start doing real estate and I'm going to be a millionaire in a week.
Yep.
And they don't realize like how much work goes into it. So what you're getting, chaps,
And
is
how much
a lot
those
of these
shows
realtors
fucking lie, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
They lie about all
not
that
lie
shit.
so much, not so lie so much as mislead.
No,
I
I
would
agree.
say.
Lie.
No, I saw there was just this big article about what's the one with all the fancy people with Chriselle and all
Oh,
that.
Selling Sunset.
None of those commissions are like none of it's like all like
Yeah.
But
So
I don't
regardless,
know.
but
Yeah.
what I think, chaps, is you get a lot of people that aren't the listing agent on your house that are just representing their client. They come to your house for the first time, don't do any of their homework, so they don't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just infuriating to watch, and because I'm like sitting there, and it wouldn't be bad, like if I was an aspire. So I'm kind of doing it to myself, because otherwise nothing really matters what they're saying unless an offer comes across. Anyway, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, I have an offer in hand because I'm stressed out beyond belief. We'll see you then. Sound the retreat. Now on Zero Block 30, I'm privileged to have Tom Hanton. He's got an incredible bio, the things that he's doing for the veteran community. It is the 50th anniversary of the last of the Vietnam prisoners of war coming home, and that's why we're having on the show. He is going to tell us about some of those events that's going on, that happened to him, and kind of what he's doing after his service and the military is over. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Let's get into what you kind of did in the Air Force. You're a pilot. Can you tell us a little bit about the plane that you flew?
I'm actually was a backseater in the F4.
Okay.
And that's what I was shot down in 1972, June 27th to be specific. I was on my 135th combat mission, arriving in Vietnam, Da Nang Air Base on the 1st of February. So 5 months, I flew 135 missions, which was pretty much every day. When I returned home, I was medically grounded for about a year, during which time I got a master's degree in business at Arizona State University. When I was returned to flying status, I went into the F-105G, which is a wild weasel. I'm not sure if your audience is familiar with that airplane. Or
Probably not. Maybe so.
Yeah.
We have a lot of aviation heads too.
Right. So I was in the wild weasel business after the war, after the Vietnam War, and then went into a new version of the F4, the F4G, as an initial flight instructor in that airplane for, I'd say the first half of my career, which is roughly 12 years. I was in 25. I was in the flying world, active flying squadrons, primarily in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. The second half of my career, I was in operational staffs at the Pentagon and a NATO assignment in New Germany, back to the States in another operational staff, and then back to Europe again in an Air Force assignment. I retired in 1993 as a director of electronic combat at the Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Kirtland Air Force Base. So 25 years in the Air Force, focused primarily on operations, either active flying or staffs that did the planning and the tasking and that type of stuff.
Okay. And I'm sure that with your 25 years career, and there's a World War II veteran that we talked to, Stanley Rubin, and he talked about his time on Iwo Jima and how whenever he spoke to somebody, they always wanted to talk about Iwo Jima. And I'm sure when you talk about your military career, even though it was very successful, you got to the rank of lieutenant colonel, spent 25 years, they primarily want to talk about those 275 days that you were a prisoner of war. But before we get into that, I want to talk about those 135 different missions that you flew, because that's a ton. How did you get up for those every day? Because I'm sure they're incredibly stressful. Your day-to-day, knowing that you're going to have to go back out and do it again, what was that like for you?
Well, as you know, anyone who's been in the military, you train and you train and you train, you do a lot of training. And then many people don't go into a combat situation, even though it seems to have changed in modern times. So there seems to always be combat going on somewhere. Mm-hmm. But you train, and so I've always felt confident, certainly after the first few. In February of 72, it's fairly a benign environment. That's if those listeners remember or are aware of President Nixon's goal of ending the Vietnam War and bringing the prisoners of war home. There was not a lot of ground operations going on at the time. So I got used to flying in a fairly benign environment. So it wasn't quite as stressful as going right into North Vietnam and having surface air missiles fired at us and MiGs attacking us, et cetera. So the first couple of months, it was fairly, I don't want to say routine. Combat's not routine. We lost airplanes and we did lose people flying into the ground, and there was small arms fire in Laos and along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is what we've focused on initially. I guess I was just motivated enough that I didn't worry about it particularly. And oddly enough, I felt confident flying over South Vietnam, where we were supporting the ARVN, the South Vietnamese Army, with close air support, or we were bombing things on the trail, which the North Vietnamese were still bringing supplies down through the Ho Chi Minh Trail from North Vietnam down through Laos, Cambodia, and into the southern part of Vietnam. I felt confident and safe there, oddly enough. But when you look at the stats of how many people we lost in South Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia versus how many of those guys came home, and I say guys because back in those days it was all men flying, it was actually less safe. It was actually, you had a higher probability of coming home if you were shot down over North Vietnam than you were in the South. So I don't know. I was motivated because I felt confidence in the people I was flying with, and the war wasn't that intense until into March, when the North Vietnamese Army literally marched down over across the DMZ with tanks and the whole entourage of an army. Then it got a little more tense. Yes, I was a little more concerned about that. And then we started flying over North Vietnam again in April. And it was frightening the first few times. I will not lie about that. but your confidence improves as you succeed in those missions. So, and I had been in the F4 a year, almost 2 years before I went to Vietnam. So I was a fairly skilled person in that airplane.
And isn't that something that you have the difference between being confident and complacent? Like if you have those two different things, walking the line right in the middle is exactly where you kind of want to be, where you aren't nervous about doing things. You have a little bit of nerves, but you're not overwhelmed by that, but you're very cognizant of the risk that's there. That's kind of where you want to be. Is that where you're at the day that you got shot down?
Well, it's one of those, when you speak to people that have been shot down, it's kind of interesting. Even today, when I talk to some of my friends, I either forgot their story or maybe I never dwelt on it. And during our recent reunion, I had a couple of conversations with guys I've known for quite some time, but never really examined or discussed our shoot downs. And of course, 50 years ago when we returned, that's one of those numbers that's a little bit shocking.
Yeah.
And it seems like more and more people I've talked about when they're shoot down, something was out of the ordinary. It was not normal. And that is exactly what happened the day I was shot down. I was flying it was a 4-ship of F4s. I had never flown with any of those other 9 people in those airplanes. If I did the math correctly, anyway, I had never flown with these other 7 guys. It was 7 of them. They were in a totally different squadron that had been attached to ours. So I was thrown into a flight of 4 people that I didn't know. So the tactics and all the rest of that stuff was different. So I hadn't, quote, practiced, if you will, with any of these guys, and it throws timing off and all those kind of decisions that one would make. And that has happened. I talked to so many guys that it seems like it was an out of ordinary situation, and mistakes may have been made, or the timing. And when you're flying airplanes, seconds are is a lot of time, believe it or not.
Oh, I bet. And that's an interesting, I've never even thought about that, of how even flying together, you have to have kind of like a platoon, essentially, where where the other part's going to be. Yeah. Where going in, like breaching a house, for example, going in, stacking up, you need to know where everybody's going to go. They need to know where you're at. I never thought about it being the same thing for pilots in planes.
Yeah, absolutely the same. We used to fly, I used to fly with a regular, in the F4, it was a 2-place airplane, and you flew as a crew. And typically you flew with other members of your flight, which is smaller than a platoon. I think a platoon's about 100 guys?
39.
Yes. So we tend to fly in 2-ship or 4-ship formations. And so in a typical Air Force flight, I can't remember how many people we had in that, quote, flight, but on the ground we're organized as a squadron with four flights, and there's maybe 15, 20 guys in a flight, if it's that many.
Buying a home can be one of the hardest things you can do, and you need the best support available to get through it. That's why we're big fans of Cross Country Mortgage. They're dedicated to getting you into your dream home and will stick with you in the trenches until it's done. Cross Country Mortgage has a team of loan officers dedicated to getting it done and finding you the best possible loan terms available. They have an average close time of 21 days, which is ridiculously fast. They've got a wide variety of loan types, which means they've got everything to cover everyone. With a huge variety of products, they cover everything from renovations, refis, and everything in between. CCM is dedicated to getting it done for you. Get a rate quote today, and CCM will send you some Barstool swag. Go to crosscountrymortgage.com/Barstool. If you need more information about Cross Country, please go to ccmlens.com.
So you're on your way. You're paired up with a group that you hadn't been paired for, and then what happened?
Well, we had a successful escort. We were a MiG escort that day in F4Es, and the F4E had a nose gun, a 20 millimeter nose gun, and we carried 4 heat-seeking missiles and 4 radar-directed missiles, and we were escorting the bombing aircraft of the day. There was a target near Hanoi, a military target. It was a tank, either a tank or a truck repair facility south of the city, and we were successful in that mission and expended no ordnance. There were no MiGs up that day, and at least that time of the day. However, during that raid, there was 2 raids. The second raid, they lost an F-4, and they were on a search and rescue mission. They set up a search and rescue mission, and since we were fully ordnanced, we were diverted to support it to prevent any MiGs from attacking the helicopters and the Sandys, which were A-1, they're propeller-driven rescue airplanes that forward air controllers that they would find and locate the downed crew and then bring in the helicopters. So we were going to support that kind of operation, which we did. We went in about 3 different times. And on the third time, we'd gotten to be very predictable. And the tactics that were used weren't really ideal. When you do a MiG cap, you don't usually have 4 airplanes all tied together. You split people up so you can look out and see around. You're not trying to fly a formation of 4 airplanes. You're out only flying off of one other person. That was a mistake that was made. Years later, in fact, 2018, I met the MiG-21 pilot who shot me down.
Wow.
In San Diego. Some Navy friends of mine hosted these MiG-21, MiG-17 pilots on an exchange of, I don't want to say reconciliation, but they wanted to get to know people who they had air combat with. Anyway, so when I had that meeting with the MiG-21 pilot, we discussed my shoot down. It was fairly straightforward what they did. He was the flight lead of this 2-ship of MiG-21s and their tactic at the time was do not engage in F-4s because a good F-4 pilot could beat them. And they did not want, they had a very limited number of airplanes. So what they would do is they would wait until you got into a compromised formation, and they would come behind you from below, typically out of the valley, and they would pull their airplane up and fire a missile at you, a heat-seeking missile. So we had no warnings. They would not use their radars, and they would and this MiG-21 is a small aircraft compared to the F-4. Plus, we were smoked. The F-4 smoked, the engine smoked, so you had a trail of smoke coming out of the tail of the airplane, which made it pretty easy to see from below. And it was a clear day, so that's what he did. He and his wingman, they pulled up below us, and we were lagging in the flight because of this difficulty in flying a 4-ship formation in a MiG cap. So we were a little bit out of position, and they took advantage of it because the rest of the flight had lost contact with us visually. At any rate, I asked him what his flight was like, this MiG-21 pilot. I wanted to know what they had done to shoot us down. We'd been directed toward MiGs at least on two of the times we were in on this MiG cap. What we did was we'd circle for a while, and we get low on gas, and we go out to the tanker, and then we come back. So we did that 3 times. So I asked him what happened. Well, every time they tried to come toward us, we were directed to turn towards them, and they would land, basically. So they landed twice at different airfields in North Vietnam, refueled, and got back into alert status, waiting to be launched at us if we came within intercept range. Essentially, that's what they were doing. They were intercepting us. They weren't dogfighting us. They were intercepting us. Anyway, on the third time, we were out of position. Of course, we'd done the same circuit 2 previous times, so we were very predictable. And so their timing was such, they just came right at us and shot us down. In fact, they shot 2 airplanes down, which something I didn't learn until later on. that they'd shot number 3, and I was in number 4 aircraft. So they shot 3 and 4, our element shot down.
And when that happens and you get shot down, what does it feel like inside the plane? And what was your first initial reaction?
Well, you go on automatic pilot almost in that type of situation. I mean, we are trained on how to position ourselves to eject, etc. Well, what happens when a heat-seeking missile went up into the left engine of the two-engine F4? It exploded, and it was like the back end of the airplane had come off. It literally went into what they call a skid, and then out of control, because the hydraulics of the F4 run right down the middle between the 2 engines. And when one of them explodes, it cuts all those lines. So you lose control over the flight controls, the rudder and the ailerons and all that, the stabilator in the back. So the airplane goes out of control. Well, what it did, it went into a spin. And of course, it's rattling people around inside this airplane because it's not flying smoothly. It's spinning.
Yeah, imagine.
I didn't know that until I came back and went. I didn't tell until I went to pilot training what a spin felt like, and that anyway, that's what it was doing. It was spinning, and we were trained in the F4 at a certain altitude above the ground. You would bail out if you did not have control of the airplane. Well, I reached down. The F4, the Navy Air Force had flight controls in the back seat, so you could fly the airplane from the back seat, which all of us did. I felt the stick of the airplane, and it was not attached. It was like it was not attached. Well, basically, there was no hydraulics to allow the stick to control the airplane. So I got in position to bail out, and I don't know if I pulled my ejection handler or whether the front seater did, but we went out, and it got real quiet, real fast. Like I said, it's automatic, and I'm in the chute. It was a fairly violent ejection. And normally in fact, you always have your helmet and your mask, your oxygen mask, as tight as you can stand it, and the same thing, you have the visor down so that you protect yourself. Well, it was such a violent ejection, it ripped the helmet off. And I had a custom-made helmet, which fit better than the standard one. So it was quite surprising that when I was in the chute and looked up, and of course I could tell my helmet was gone, and make sure I had a good parachute, which I did. So I went out 10,000 feet roughly above the earth. We were at, I don't know, 25,000 feet or thereabouts when we got hit. And I don't remember, I think it was like 16,000 feet on the altimeter when I bailed out. And next thing I know, I'm looking down at a village and a karst. That's a high mountain peak thing that sticks up out of the valley. There's several of them around the area. And I am steering my parachute. There's a mechanism, a way to cut the lines with a lanyard, and you can steer your parachute a little better. So I did that, and I was going towards this karst because I didn't want to go down to the village. And there's some guys down in the 3 peasants down the far end of this rice paddy that had rifles. They were shooting at me. So I didn't have any choice. I couldn't continue going over them. I went the opposite direction, which was towards that village, and a stand of bamboo. It looked fairly thick from the air, but when I got down into it, when I landed, it was not very thick. They pretty much cleaned that place out, leaving a little bit of bamboo, but they used that bamboo for their hooches and, implements and things like that. At any rate, so for about an hour, I was able to hide from them, but they knew the area. And
before we can continue there, I want to talk about some of your emotions in that moment, because you're talking about it really matter-of-factly now. When you realize that your helmet is gone and the situation that is about to take Kirk, because you know what's going on in Vietnam. I'm sure you've had all the different safety briefs, the intel briefs about what to do. how much were you kind of freaking out, for lack of a better term, freaking out in your brain, and then also going back to your training and kind of having to center yourself again? What was that process like?
Well, oddly enough, I was very unhappy. First of all,
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally. In fact, I wrote something. Somewhere I wrote it. I said, I was angry. I was. How would I want to? How do I want to couch this? I was upset because I knew that my flying was probably over, even though we were on a rescue mission that I had hope of getting rescued. I know I was in shock. Later on, I saw a picture that they took of me when I got to the Hilton about 3 days later, and I looked like my eyes are the size of saucers. I mean, I'm sure I was in some kind of shock. And you work on auto, like I said earlier, autopilot. You just do these things that you were trained to do, cutting the parachute thing and run. But oddly enough, I was angry. And in fact, I titled this paper I wrote, "A Time to Shout," as I was just, I knew that the errors had been made. And I was upset at myself for not being more directive and telling people what to do, in that formation. You look back at those things, but I know I was in shock. And that's why military things, a lot of it is rote. I've not been a ground guy, but I can only imagine what it's like when you get attacked by people. I mean, you go into this mode of operation that you're trained to be in. I just, I guess the best word I can use is I was just in shock. And I was thinking reasonably clear, I felt at the time, for, the circumstances as they were presented me, the guys coming after me and this and that. And, but it was a helpless feeling because there was nowhere close for me really to get. If I could have gotten to that mountain or that karst, I probably would have had a better chance of being rescued and returning to the fight, so to speak. But I think it was a frustrating and anger-filled and helplessness. Yeah, helpless.
Yeah.
I'd say helpless was probably the best word I could come up with.
Yeah, and that's what I was just gonna say. Like, I have been injured in war as well, and there's almost no way to describe that feeling. English is a very complex. Then we steal from all different types of languages across, but there is nothing that describes that level of fear inside the language. It's almost impossible. So when you landed and you go through the bamboo, what happens next?
I was there probably in and out, but I found the one place that seemed like it was safe to hide, and that's when I didn't hear anybody coming around, so I pulled out my survival radio and had it down. I turned it all the way down as far as before on the volume, because I knew these guys could probably hear it. And I was listening with up to my ear, and I could hear this rescue going on. Well, obviously they were working on getting my front seater, which they ended up rescuing. They did rescue him. And that's when I learned that there was a second airplane shot down on that radio call. I made a radio transmission, but I never got an answer. And then I went quiet again because I wanted to make sure these guys weren't, I wanted to hear where they were. And it didn't take them long to find this one hiding place in this small area of bamboo between the fields there, the rice paddies. And they captured me and took me up into that area, oddly enough, that karst, because they could hear, and I could hear the rescue going on the other side of that karst. As it turns out, two things of interest to that day. To the North Vietnamese, that was one of their big days of shooting down the most F-4s in the whole war, 5 of them. They'd shot 5 airplanes down with various and sundry other, SAMs and other types of airplanes, but never 5 F-4s with just MiGs shooting them down. So their Air Force had a very successful day. So that was a big deal for them in the war. That was one of the reasons that MiG pilot wanted to talk to those of us that were shot down that day, because it was a big deal for them. Second thing about that day, it was one of the third, for the rescue forces, it was one of the third most notable rescues of the two pilots. They rescued the two pilots, and the two of us backseaters both got captured. And why was it such an important thing for the rescue guys? The ground fire was so intense that one of the helicopters that was picking up my front seater, they got shot up so bad they had to depart and leave the pararescue guy on the ground. Jeez. And he had to haul my front seater who had passed out from the ejection. He and his ground impact dragged this guy through about 200 yards of bamboo and just rough terrain. In fact, that pararescue guy got the Air Force Cross, which is one below to the Medal of Honor for that mission. So for the rescue guys, it was a big deal. They had a couple others that you may or may not be aware of in the 72 that were quite notable. The one of them was Roger Locker, who was on the ground for 26 days or thereabouts, and the other one was one down by the DMZ that I participated in of an EB-66 navigator who was surrounded by North Vietnam Army, and I forget how many rescue people they lost airplane wise on that rescue. So those, and of course the one I just mentioned of our flight, Valiant, was our flight call sign, was their third biggest deal. So it's kind of an interesting day, to say the least. Yeah.
And when did hope? I mean, I hate to use that word, but when you're sitting there waiting to know if you're going to get captured or if they're going to rescue you, how did that go down? Like when the people came in to actually capture you, what did that scene look like? And for those that are listening, Tom told me I could ask anything and I don't want to be insensitive, but what was that moment like when you knew for a fact you were about to be a prisoner of war?
Well, I tell you, I as I mentioned earlier, I was in shock, of course. That was the most, well, they beat me with their rifle butts. That was the harshest I was treated through my whole POW experience. In 72, they were not torturing like they were doing prior to 69. They seriously maltreated prisoners. I did not experience that, but I had I guess a loss of, it really is over. I think I was probably during the time I was in hiding thinking that there was a chance that these guys wouldn't find me and that I could get rescued and rejoin my squadron. But when they were there, face to face, and they were probably more frightened than I was, the looks on their faces and, pointing their rifles at me. It was just it's a sense of hopelessness. It's like, okay, how could it possibly get out of this? Will there be an opportunity to escape? Well, I don't know. So, they teach us to don't give up, which I didn't, but it was a hopeless feeling that I don't think there's going to be a real good opportunity to escape, but we'll have to see how this goes. And I just was taking it one moment at a time.
And that aspect, whenever you did get picked up, did you walk to your prisoner of war camp? Did you ride? And if so, what was that walk or ride like?
Well, what they did is they took me up into that karst area that I was initially trying to steer toward. Mm-hmm. And they walked me. The first thing they did is they took my boots and my flight suit and all my gear. It was a seat kit it's like a bunch of survival stuff. And we had a survival vest. So they took all those things and I was in my skivvies. And at the time they left me with my socks. So we walked over there and up a stream in this karst. And we could hear the air battle going on across the other way. But we stayed there until it was dark pretty much. So I was shot down around noon and captured about 1. My watch was also, which was very kind of curious, my watch was also stripped off my arm when I ejected. So I didn't know roughly, it was roughly an hour So we were there from about 1 or 2 in the afternoon until it started getting dark. So we were back up in that up on that creek for about 6 hours or so. And they moved me in the twilight, if you will, towards another village. Oddly enough, the village that was closest to the rice paddy, there were several hooches on fire because it was close to the rescue part, and they were the rescue forces, I guess, there was some small arms fire coming from them from the village, and so they took it out. And I'm thinking, oh, this is great. These guys are going to be really happy now. Their houses are on fire, and they're taking me where? So I was concerned about making it to a pre-OW camp at that point. Anyway, we walked to the next village, a village further down, somewhere in close vicinity, and they tied me up. All these hooches were raised, so probably because it's in a valley and would flood. Anyway, so we were up in there, and they tied me down in there at night. Next day, we walked all day and met. At the end of that day, we met a Jeep, a Russian Jeep on the road.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did anybody speak English, or was everybody just essentially yelling at you in Vietnamese?
Nope, they were more curious. I felt like I was a person in a zoo, if you will. They were kind of curious about this person. I knew a little French, and I was thirsty, and I asked for water. And they, oddly enough, we had a water can in this survival kit. They actually gave it to me to open. Well, it was the old kind of. It came with one of those, I don't know, those can openers. Back in the day, you'd open beer with a thing. It didn't have a pop top.
Today's show is also brought to you by Simply Safe. If you listened to the show before, you've probably heard me talk about Simply Safe. They're always innovating. They're always working on the next thing to help keep you and your loved ones safe. Like their new 2-in-1 smoke and CO detector. It's a next generation hazard detection that distinguishes between fire and cooking smoke, so your home is protected and you'll get fewer false alarms. Their new smoke and CO detectors sensors join Simply Safe comprehensive suite of advanced security cameras, sensors, and hazard detectors for seamless whole home monitoring. For with Simply Safe's 24/7 professional monitoring service with trained agents stand ready to respond in an emergency, dispatch police, firefighters, or EMTs to your door, even if you're away or can't be reached. Monitoring service costs under $1 a day. Right now, get 20% off your new system when you sign up for interactive monitoring. Visit simplysafe.com/ZBT. That's simplysafe.com/ZBT. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
They actually gave me that thing to open the water and let me drink it. I mean, I was surprised that they would do that. But anyway, nobody spoke English. And of course, I didn't speak any Vietnamese. And they would just, kind of motion to do things. And I would do them, which was mainly, give them the hands and tie me up and that kind of thing. But while I was walking, they had me tied with my hands behind my back. And there'd be a guy in front of me and one behind me, and I don't know how many more behind them. But we met regular Army people on this dirt road, and we were about 80 miles from Hanoi, very close to the Laotian border. So I walked one day, and then one more day in the Jeep to get to Hanoi, one overnight in another village, and I felt comfortable once I was in the hands of the Army, because now I'm in, quote, the system, and I wasn't as worried about somebody, doing away with me out there in the middle of nowhere land. I think what they had is a bounty on our heads if somebody would turn us in. I would suspect if there hadn't been a bounty on our head from the government, they probably would have. Maybe, what's in it for them? I mean, I think about it. If
Right.
you were out there and somebody bombs your house, are you going to be real happy with these people?
Right, because they're walking too. Like, and they don't
Oh,
want to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So once I was in the hands of the military, I felt a little more comfortable. Of course, I'd had, almost 48 hours to think about the situation then, and I was still
Which
trying
had to feel like 10 years. Those
Yeah,
48
well,
hours had to feel like 10 years.
we're told to, once they had my radio, once they had my radio, I wasn't too concerned about the fact they had my 38 handgun. I mean, that was nice to have, but almost useless in many regards. Once they had the radio, I knew the probability of being rescued was about zero. So escaping, if I were to escape, where would I go? What would I do? I just, I lost the opportunity early on. Once they had me in their grasp and had my radio, I lost comms, and to get in touch with anybody is, it's just zero. So I had to start accepting the fact that I was going to be a prisoner and to not do anything stupid to get either shot or whatever. There's still an enemy, and with the errant soldier, you never know. Just because you've got a couple guys with guns around you and they're in the army doesn't mean they're going to follow the rules.
Right. And so when you were walking through and you finally get to Hanoi, was there anyone there that kind of took you under your wing, or was you in solitary for a while? How did that first day go for you?
Well, I got there the end of the day, so it was night, essentially getting dark. And I was in this Jeep blindfolded and tied up. So, but I had worked the blindfold down so I could kind of move my head and see a little bit. I saw the Hanoi Hilton, which you see pictures of today. That was the vision that I saw out of the corner of my eye, going in there. And of course, once you're in the city, it was you could hear all the traffic and the people moving around out there. But once we got inside that prison, it was dead quiet. And they put me into a room, took off my blindfold, and it was basically in a interrogation room. And that's where I stayed for about 3 weeks, on and off. It was a room that was primarily used for interrogation, but they had put one of these. It's like a bed. It was a wooden bed on the floor, no legs. Basically a platform, and that was the bed, and nothing in there but the table and the chair for the interrogators, and then a stool for me. And they'd come in. It had a light bulb that would run 24/7. The windows were shuttered and wired shut, so you couldn't open them. You could kind of look down and see out, but you couldn't see anything except the ground. Anyway, I was in there for about 3 weeks through various interrogations, day and night, and of course, initially they wanted military information, which it sounds crazy, but I didn't have any. I was thrown in with these guys. I didn't have a clue what, so I played dumb, and it was true. I didn't know any of their names even. I couldn't come up with names, and they thought I was just being whatever. And I should have made up names, but then I wouldn't remember what names I made up, like Mickey Mouse and all the really
right.
Thinking back, I said, why didn't I have the nerve to do that, or the thought to do that? I was trying to, and they believed me. They finally gave up on that.
And that's the second time you've mentioned something like that. Did you, hindsight bias is a big thing in Monday morning quarterbacking. And I always talk about that with my injury, where if I could go back, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I take this step? Why did I take that? What would have happened if this happened? How often did you find yourself Monday morning quarterbacking and almost blaming yourself for this horrific accident?
Probably more times than I can recall, but yes, I actually, after a while, I did start being a little more bold. Primarily after I was put in with other people. Then I knew that they were gonna, there were still no guarantees, because I had made no contact with anyone on the radio or in person. I would try to tap on the wall. We had the tap code that we learned to tap. It wasn't Morse code, it was similar, but you tap on the walls and you try to get in touch with people. But I wasn't close to any of the normal cells. I was off in this, I'll call it administrative area, not the proper prison part. And so I was a little bit, I wasn't I guess I use whenever I give a talk, I said I was either the teacher's pet. This was in school. I was either the teacher's pet or their worst nightmare. I could be the one. And back when I went to school, if you acted up, and I went to Catholic schools, the nuns would wrap you on the wrist or on the knuckles with a ruler, or embarrass you by making you stand in the back of the room or write on the blackboard, "I will not talk in class" 25 times, etc. Anyway, so when I got into a more formal environment, the second guessing stopped. I would start doing things to harass them, if you will, jokes or whatever, just things, obstinate things. If they wanted me to do something, I'd do it the opposite way, or fumble around and do this and that, knowing that they weren't going to beat me, because I knew that in that time frame, 1972, they weren't doing that kind of stuff. They did rough some folks up. I do know that. I'm aware of that. But I felt confident that I could get away with these things. So, yes, I did second guess a lot of the early things. The shoot down. Why didn't I get on the radio more? And why didn't I do this and that, et cetera? There's not much I could do about that rescue. I tried. I did everything I could do to try to be quiet and to use the radio. I did make a couple radio calls, but got no response, probably because I wasn't line of sight with anybody. That Karst was in the way, and they were on the opposite side of it. But as far as the actual capture and all that, I didn't do a lot of second guessing, to be honest with you. Same thing with the interrogation. We got very good training in when I went through survival school, because people had come back from Vietnam. Some of the prisoners had been released early, and they did give some good information to our survival school people on what to expect. So the training that I got was pretty good on how to respond to interrogation, and the mock interrogations that we had taught me a lot. So I felt pretty good about the interrogation part, and how to, I don't say, parry with them and try to do the only thing that was difficult was they trying to come up with names. I didn't have any names, but yeah, that second guessing I would love to, because I've heard of guys doing stuff like that. I did do some interesting things after a while, as my interrogators drug on. And what I told them, they'd ask me some question, and I'd lead them down some rabbit hole of, I'd get what I did and didn't do in the Air Force. I'd start instructing them on how to be a navigator and all this kind of stuff, and they'd write all this stuff down. I just keep going and giving them information, inconsequential information. But yes, second guessing is a good thing.
And was there ever a point in those 275 days where you almost came resigned, where this became the new normal? And if so, how long did that take?
Well, it get very easy. It'd be very easy. And we did have a couple guys in our group that just had a hard time of it, being locked up like that. As we mentioned before we started the conversation here, about guys that have been there, like Eb Alvarez, 8.5 years. He was there. Of course, at that time, it had been 7 years. And I would think, I'm alive. I was very blessed. I wasn't injured. Superficial injuries, no serious injuries compared to some people. So I knew that my dad was in the military, so I was very used to having my life changed overnight. Lose all your friends and go to a new base, etc. So I was used to having those kind of things, and I could adapt to them really well. That I viewed that prisoner situation very similarly. That first of all, I'm not hurt. There's guys that are worse off. One of my first cellmates had a really broken up shoulder from hitting the canopy rail as he bailed out of the F4. In fact, he ended up.
I mean, if it ripped your helmet off and watch off, I can't imagine if
but it was
shoulder.
just other than wind blast to my eye, I had no real I was flailed around and had some sore knees and all, but nothing broken. And so I felt I'm a a glass is half full kind of person to start with. So I'd try to focus on these good things, not the bad part. I mean, you can say, oh, and that's what would become depressing for some of these guys. You just have to try to boost their outlook. So I just took it one day at a time too. I just knew, hey, that I'm not, and I'm a routine. I develop a routine of some sort. Like the military, you get up, you make your bed, you do your PT, you say your prayers, all these things that occupy your time. And fortunately, once you're in with a group of people, and on average, I had four cellmates of different backgrounds, just learning about their lives. And some guys are very good at remembering jokes. For example, I can't remember a joke at all. So some guy would be able to tell jokes all day or half the day. Or guys remember movies and things like that, or singers, or we talk about cars or stuff like that. Rarely did we talk about food, but everyone,
because it makes you want it. Yeah, I
oh
bet.
yeah, but it's a developing a routine, and I don't know. Like I said, I grew up in the military, so I was used to change. Sometimes it would be 3 years, sometimes it would be 1 year. You never knew when your dad was going to get a change of assignment. And I went to 4 different high schools, for example. I was used to change and having new situations. So I don't want to say it was easy, but it was not as difficult for me as it was for some people.
And I'm sure that the information that you're getting inside from the American perspective or what's going on, did you get a whole lot of news that updates, or were you kind of flying blind and you didn't know what was going on?
Well, we get news, but it was usually bad news. What they would do is they would take American magazines, cut out whatever bad things were going on. If you, for those who are familiar with the 70s, early 70s and late 60s, it was anti-war this and all this, the race riots going on here and there in the U.S., et cetera. So we would get all the news like as if our country was coming apart at the seams. And essentially they were giving us, I considered it propaganda, because it was obviously it was certainly trying to make us feel negative about our country, basically. We would get I think it was about an hour a day, we have these speakers in the cells, and they would we'd hear people like anti-war people that were either visiting Vietnam or were in the U.S. giving speeches. We would get
like Jane Fonda.
Precisely. Well, I got so sick of hearing that. She was over there in August when I first got out of solitary, and we were by that time I think we were over at the zoo, one of the big prison camps that's in Hanoi, and I shimmied up this pipe and to the top of this pipe and ripped out the speaker wires, because I got so sick and tired of hearing that kind of stuff. Of course, we did get some good stuff over there, which was music. And I told the guys, I said, I guess I should have asked you before I went up there and got rid of our sound box. But anyway, yes, those kind of things, they would try to demoralize you. I just ignored most of all that stuff and just, I knew what it was all about.
And that seems like an extra weight. Like for somebody like you that is a admitted half glass full person, there has to be half empty people. And then if I know that personality type, because I'm kind of that personality too, you feel like you have to lift the people up that are down. So you're taking on an extra emotional toll there to make sure that the people to your left and right aren't in the dips of despair like they normally would be.
Well, absolutely. And the other part is we maintained a military structure, if you will. I was the senior ranking young captain. The other 2 of the guys in the room were lieutenants, and the other ones were captains. For at least, I'd say about half the time I was there, I was the senior ranking guy. So there was that additional part. And unlike some of the other services, the Air Force, just because you're a captain doesn't mean you're like a company commander would be in the Army.
Right.
Or as a lieutenant. So the Air Force we had fewer responsible positions where you had to lead people, lead men. You had to so I'd never been a leader of anything. I had just been promoted to captain. And your flight commanders tended to be senior captains and sometimes majors. And now I'm in charge of these guys. There were like 8 of us. And I'm inexperienced really, other than my officer candidate school or officer training school stuff. So I had no experience as a leader, to be quite honest with you. It was kind of somewhat intimidating because 2 of the guys in my group were Air Force Academy graduates, and they had a lot of experience. But here I am, I outranked them. So I mean, we didn't march around and do stuff like that. But the point was, I didn't have a lot of experience, basically. And we did act as a team still. And some of the things we would do, they did not like it. They didn't use rank. But when we were out in the yard on our break, they let us out of the cells for a few hours in the morning, a few hours in the afternoon to do things and sit around and whatever. And they wanted you to do something. They would tell one of the guys to do something. They'd say, go ask Captain Hanton to tell us to do that. They didn't like that at all. But that was one of the ways we resisted.
Yeah, and that seems pretty common story, that you have to adapt and have to come up with some kind of normalcy in your structure to make it day to day bearable at all. So you have all this information, you have the propaganda that's coming in from people like Jane Fonda, and then eventually you get the word. The word has to come out that the war is over. When who delivered that news to you all, and how did that come about?
Well, when they signed the peace agreement in Paris, the stipulation was that we had to be informed within so many days, and they would read. Northern Vietnamese had to read and provide us the copy of this peace agreement. So we were all. This was in late January of '73, and they had an auditorium in the zoo. That's where I was. They moved us back and forth, but at that point we were back in the zoo from the Hanoi Hilton. And one evening they took us all from all of the other buildings, and there was 6 buildings at the zoo, as I recall. They took us all in this auditorium. There's probably maybe 100 guys in there, and of course they took us. They stood up in front of us on the stage and read the peace agreement had been signed, and what the rules were as far as release, and it all had to be done within 2 months, February and March, etc. So, and nobody stood up and clapped or did anything. We just kind of took that in stride and went back to our rooms, and the process started. Of course, immediately the food improved, and we started getting Red Cross packages with books, American books, not this propaganda books, Russian books that they would pass out on occasion for us to read. So life got better, and of course, it's not over until it's over. And being the end, the way the release was going to take place would be by order of shoot down. In other words, the first guy shot down would come home first, along with anyone who was seriously injured. And there were some few guys, particularly the B-52 guys. There was a number of them that had been seriously injured when they bailed out of those B-52s in December. And my cellmate Chuck, who had that beat up shoulder, he was deemed. Now it was up to the Vietnamese to deem who was going home, quote, who was injured, not us. They didn't come ask us, but they selected the people to go home early on the first. I think it was all those guys that were injured went home on the first flight.
In that, when you first leave the auditorium, was there any thought that you had that this is just another propaganda machine, that they're doing this to get our hopes up and then to emotionally crush us?
No, actually we didn't, but we were very cautious showing emotion, whether it's happy emotion or sad emotion. We never did display. I never remember anyone showing any elation or anything regarding that announcement. I think we all knew, because in 72, we knew that what Nixon was doing, he was ending the war and bringing POWs home. So we already kind of up there at that level.
Today's show is also brought to you by Proper Wild. If you suffer from symptoms of ADHD, lack of focus, no productivity, your brain is constantly wandering, you need to check out Proper Wild's Clean All Day Energy Shot. Proper Wild uses organic caffeine stacked with L-theanine, which has clinically been proven way to boost your energy, focus, productivity without the jitters and the crash. There's no preservatives, no artificial sweeteners, no horrible chemicals, just a natural tasting energy shot with clean ingredients that work. I love it. I talk about it all the time. Buying a house, selling a house, it's stressful. I'm up all night, waking up constantly, not getting great sleep. And I need to still get up and do the things that I need to do. So I grab one of these Proper Wilds, put it down the old gullet, and I'm ready to go again for a little while. Go to properwild.com/barstool if you want to try out Proper Wild for 30% off, which I highly recommend that you should.
But we also knew that things had changed throughout the war on this negotiating thing. Now, when the B-52s came over and they moved us from the zoo back to the Hanoi Hilton, they put us in a large room with about 26 guys in it, and they did not realize that there was a new guy in there already in this big room. He was a Navy lieutenant that had been shot down early. He was so early you weren't allowed to have facial hair. Let's put it that way. It was something that they didn't. So he hadn't even shaved his mustache off. So we picked his brain all night about what was going on, because I'd been there 6 months already by that time, along with most of the guys in my group. Well, we learned what was going on. It kind of updated us on the status of things. The B-52s came back. They thought there was going to be an agreement met, and then they reneged on it, and that's when the buffs went back in there in December. We did have some concern because the bombing had stopped. And we thought, oh, great, it's over, we're going to be going home. And then it kept dragging on, and finally back a couple of months later in December, it heated back up again. So anyway, we're talking to this guy, and his name, oddly enough, was also Tom, about what was going on, and he filled us in on all this stuff. So when the announcement came, about 3 weeks later, we didn't feel like it was a head fake on it. We felt like this, okay. They tried to get away with once the B-52s went in and flattened them, and now they really are serious, and this is for real. But it's not over until you're out of there. And of course, the first release was literally about 2 weeks after that.
Wow.
Middle of February was the first release, and three C-141s. So when we saw those C-141s come in, because where we were at the zoo, you could see them come in. We could see them across the wall from where our building was. So we knew at least the first release was going according to schedule, and they had a few glitches, but they got, by the end of March when I went out, 28th of March, until we were in international airspace, and the aircraft commander of that C-141 said, we're in international airspace, everybody. And you've seen that picture. For some reason, that picture of all of us shouting, that was the flight I was on. About all these flights, for some reason, it seems to make the publishing things. But anyway, yeah.
I bet, and my experience, not even trying to remotely compare, but that feeling when you leave a combat zone. We left Fallujah and went into Spangdahlem, Germany. And I remember the relief of stepping off the plane and having my feet hit really a safe territory for the first time. I imagine that feeling for you was exponentially more than what I experienced. When you finally put your feet back on American soil, what was that feeling of relief like? And did it feel like I have life and I'm going to be able to continue to be Tom?
Yeah. Well, it started, of course, we went from Hanoi to Clark Air Base in the Philippines, and that was the first feeling of, I'm safe. The second one was actually, like you stated, it was at Travis Air Force Base for me in California. And it was the same thing. Not only was it safe, I was now in a uniform. When we came out of Hanoi, we were in the clothes they gave us, but now I'm in a uniform and I'm on American soil, and there's my family. And it's like, it was elation beyond elation. And I'm not a normally over emotional person. At least I don't show it like some people do. But it was just, and I hadn't seen my son. My son was born while I was missing in action. I was MIA for most of 6 months of my 9 months. I was so my son was born. Oddly enough, when I left to go to Vietnam, my wife was pregnant, and we'd picked out a name. If it was a boy and it was a girl, it was be this. Well, he was a boy, and I was MIA, so she named him after me, not the name that we chose. And I don't recall what it was, but anyway, I hadn't seen him. He was 5 months old when I came home, so it was quite emotional and quite. At the same time, it was almost like a dream. Like, this can't be real. You know, I've been taking one day at a time and not accepting a lot of emotional things, but here I am. All of a sudden, it's emotional, and because we were reserved over there. We showed no emotion when they read us the peace agreement. We showed no emotion when we went out and got on the 141 until we were in international airspace. We were all just, I don't want to say pan-faced, but that's a good term. We just had no emotion. So it's like flipping the switch. All of a sudden, now I can be emotional.
I can't even comprehend like what you just said and how difficult that must have been. When you finally got to the Philippines, is that when you were able to speak to your wife for the first time?
Yes, they gave us, the times difference and all that, but we all had an opportunity to call family and talk about, about things. It was, I was gone not 9 months as a POW, and we talked a few times before I was shot down. We had phone calls you could make from Vietnam, but they were very short and they weren't in depth.
And the delay, I imagine, was
all
crazy.
that stuff. Yeah, it was. So it was. I don't want to say it was awkward, but it was kind of. You're talking to a stranger almost. She'd been through a whole bunch of her own pregnancy without me there, and not knowing where I was dead or alive, and then just the whole bit. So she had her own shock, if you will, in that sense. So it was somewhat like two strangers talking to each other, get reacquainted. And like I said, I was only gone a little more than that, because I was gone from a year and a half roughly, but in round numbers. But I can only imagine some of the guys that were there for so many years. I mean, to try to catch up. I mean, I didn't get any letters. That was one of the things that, because of my harassing them, I refused to write letters because they wanted me to write certain things I do refuse to. So I didn't write letters. So consequently, they didn't give me letters. After I was towards the end, I started writing letters, because they did give me a couple of letters. Oddly enough, when my son was born in October, is when they released my name, and I got all these letters that had been written from the time I was shot down. So I didn't, you can't, those letters that they let you have wasn't really communication in a sense. But all it did was give you confidence that that person's still alive, and they love you or are interested in you. But they weren't long. 5 lines doesn't give you a lot of space to get into any details. Plus, what are you going to talk about other than say, or I'm doing fine, or I can't wait to see you? Those kind of very trite expressions. But
and you mentioned how you were kind of had to be pan-faced, that you weren't allowed to show emotion. When you came back and you went back into normal military life, doing your job as an Air Force officer, but also being back at home, how long did it take you to restore your natural personality or your natural emotions that you had?
Oh, I didn't feel like it took that long, but I'll tell you what took a little bit of time was to get over the response of the American people and many organizations that were doing so many things for us. I don't know what it was like for you when you came back from Iraq, but you know the guys that were coming, the people, the service members coming back in Vietnam did not get a real good welcome home. Mm-hmm. We got all this welcome home stuff that was, to me, it was almost embarrassing. I felt really unworthy of it for a couple of reasons. One, that I didn't lose that many friends in Vietnam, but a couple high school buddies are on the wall. Their names are on the wall. And squadron mates from the squadron I was in. But a majority, we got all this heroism heaped upon us, and you know, I'm in there with guys like Ev Alvarez and you know, those guys that were there so long, and I felt, oh, you know, why me? I didn't really do anything other than endure 9 months of a relatively easy time compared to these other guys. So, and it was hard to get emotional about it because I felt that I didn't deserve it.
And there's always that comparison, right? Like, I think that's the plight of the warfighter is when someone tells you thanks for your service or how difficult was that, we all naturally go to, oh, well, it was worse for this person. It was worse for this person. And we almost let comparison be the thief of our joy and the thief of our accomplishments for what we've had. And it's interesting to hear, because Charlie Plum, he's been on the show, and I believe he was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. And he mentioned people that were there longer than him. And the way that I am having this podcast, if I was there for 3 days, I would be like, I was a prisoner of war for 3 days. And you guys in your generation, I mean, 275 days. That's about the length of the normal Marine deployment during the time that I was there, is 275, 290 days. So for entire deployments, and those felt forever for us. We talked about forever. You had 135 missions and then the 275 days. And I imagine it wasn't you get out of Hanoi and then the next day you're back at home with your family. I imagine that was a process as well. You got to, at some point, Tom, you got to take that heroism on the chin and know that people like me and people who are listening to this show appreciate what you went through and the type of demeanor that you and the people that were there with you, the other prisoners of war, have exuded over the last few years. And you're doing that with your organization now. Can you tell us what nonprofit, the Veteran Service Organization that you're a part of, and what it means to you and what it means to the community of other people who have service that are similar to yours?
Sure. When we came home in 73, we started an organization called NOMPALS Incorporated, which is a fraternal military 5013, I think it's 19, military fraternal organization. And we've gotten together with reunions it used to be every 2 years or thereabouts. In the last couple of years, we've had them every year for a variety of reasons, but we primarily to have reunions and gather. I've been blessed to be one of the first late shoot downs to be the president of that organization. 2010 to 2014 was my stint, and I'm currently their director of communications, which means I put out the newsletters and other kind of things and keep the website up. But we are it's quite an honor to be with these guys. I've gotten to know so many of them because of those positions that I've been in, and they're just I'll tell you, the best group of people. Every one of them, the integrity that these guys have is just beyond belief. And you mentioned it about just accept what you did as honorable and that you deserve it. And that's every one of them so much says, look, if you were there one day, and oh, by the way, your efforts in 72 and your fellow aviators got us home. You helped bring us home. So we're thankful for you for the time you spent, getting us home. So, but still, 75%, roughly 75% of the guys shot down over North Vietnam and held in North Vietnam were there between 1964 and 68. 1968 was the bombing halt. Then back in 72, when the North Vietnamese came across, we went north again. So 25% of us were shot down in 72 of that 691 people that came out. So yes, there was a fair number of us, and I do accept it. The guys who are my heroes are the ones that did not come home. That they gave the ultimate sacrifice. And you lost people over there. I know that I've read about what the Marines went through in Fallujah, and I just shake my head. I've seen some of even the movies don't do it justice. That doesn't, it's hard to film combat.
Yeah.
And get the emotion in it. But I've seen some stuff, and I've seen the movies of and combat footage of Vietnam. The guys slogging through I just shake my head how they could do that every day. When I flew, we went back to a base that had air conditioning, and we had a club. We could go have a beer, etc., and unwind a little bit. But
Tom, we're not going to listen to how good things were for you.
Yeah, I know.
We're just not going to do it.
First thing the Air Force does is put a runway in. The second thing they put in a golf course. No, but seriously, the ground forces, that's what we're there to support. And I tell you, my hat's off to anyone who serves either the Marines or the Army on the ground. It's just awesome. I shake my head every day.
I always say about Fallujah that the biggest source of honor for me is not just being from the Battle of Fallujah, but in the Marine Corps birthday message, we're listed alongside of Operation like Ho Chi Minh City, that we are in the same breath as Ho Chi Minh City, Fallujah, and Marja. And being in that message with people that are represented by people like you is an honor, and it will always be an honor to me. And every time I hear it, I can't believe that we're associated with warriors like yourself and the people that you are there with. It's one of the greatest honors of my life, truly.
Well, I tell you, I seriously appreciate it myself. Like I say, anyone who serves, and I get those same thanks you're talking about, and from civilians. And I say to them, you're serving our country some way. Everybody does, or it's a country. I said, you for example, you're working and paying taxes, and you helped pay my salary. Mm-hmm. I said, without you doing that, I wouldn't be out there working either. So I try to I do accept it. Trust me, I do. But I also want them to know that we need their help too. We really do.
Last question I have for you, Tom. What was that back pay check like?
Well, actually, the paycheck, I had a spouse, so she was,
okay.
So she got the money, but you're going to laugh at this one, and I don't remember the number, but we got some kind of TDY pay. You're going to say, you got to be kidding me. TDY pay to Hanoi? Yes. TDY pay. It was like
typical Air Force.
I want to say it was for all of us, actually. It was $5 a day, I think. It may have been less than that, but some of the guys got a nice chunk of change that were there for. And some of the guys were bachelors. There's a couple of guys in my group that were bachelors, so they had all their pay, plus they had it was a hell of a forced savings plan, not being able to go out to spend any money. But yeah, the only quote back pay I got was that $5 a day TDY pay that DOD. And I don't understand how they ever came up with that.
$5 a day is ridiculous. I'd rather have nothing than $5. At least $5, you recognize that you did something. Zero, I'd rather have zero than $5.
Yes, you're right.
Well, Tom, we appreciate your time today, and again, we appreciate your service. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, and same to you and the rest of the folks that listen to your podcast. I appreciate your interest. To be honest with you, it's great. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes.